A homeless girl with a voice like an angel slipped into an upscale restaurant where a billionaire sat with his disabled daughter. When she began to sing, the silent child smiled for the first time in months. But what the billionaire discovered about this mysterious girl would shatter everything he thought he knew about family, sacrifice, and love. Marcus Quinn was one of the most powerful men in New York City. His technology empire stretched across continents, his investments moved markets, and his name commanded respect in every boardroom. Yet behind the walls of his Fifth Avenue penthouse, his greatest battle was not against competitors or market crashes. It was against the silence of a daughter whose voice he longed to hear again. His only daughter, Lila, once a bright, curious 8-year-old, had been born with a rare genetic condition that left her bound to a wheelchair, unable to speak or move freely. Her big brown eyes still sparkled with intelligence, but her body had become a prison. Once she babbled endlessly, asking 1,000 questions. Once she tried to dance to every song on the radio. But now she sat quietly in her chair, her spirit dimmed by a condition no amount of money could cure. At first, Marcus fought it with his wealth. He flew her to Switzerland for experimental treatments, to Japan for cutting-edge therapies, to Germany for revolutionary procedures. Every attempt ended in the same crushing disappointment. Lila's smile faded. Her attempts at communication disappeared. She rarely left her room except when her nurse wheeled her to different locations, hoping something might spark a reaction. Marcus, though commanding and confident before the world, felt his heart breaking each day. He watched her staring blankly at walls, lost in a world he couldn't reach. But one cold evening in November, something unexpected happened. Marcus had taken Lila to Aurelio's, an upscale Italian restaurant she had pointed to from the car window. As they sat at their usual corner table, Lila staring listlessly at her untouched pasta, a voice drifted across the dining room. Clear, powerful, and hauntingly beautiful. In the far corner, a girl no older than 13 stood beside the piano. Her clothes were worn and patched, her shoes held together with tape, her hair pulled back with a rubber band. But when she opened her mouth to sing, the entire restaurant fell silent. She sang an old jazz standard, her voice carrying pain and hope in equal measure. Her eyes were closed, her small hands pressed against her heart, as if the song was pulling something deep from her soul. And then Marcus saw it. Lila was looking up. Her head, usually tilted to one side, was straight. Her eyes, usually unfocused, were fixed on the girl with laser intensity. And slowly, like sunrise breaking through storm clouds, a smile spread across his daughter's face. It wasn't a polite smile or a fleeting expression. It was pure, unguarded wonder. For the first time in months, Lila was truly present, truly alive. The girl's name was Janelle. At least, that's what she told the restaurant manager when he let her perform for tips on slow weeknights. Nobody knew her full story because she rarely spoke about it. What the staff did know was that Janelle had no home. Some nights she slept in the subway stations. Other nights she found corners of 24-hour diners where she could rest until sunrise. Janelle had one thing that kept her alive. Her voice. When hunger gnawed at her stomach and cold seeped into her bones, she sang. When police moved her along from doorways, she sang. When despair threatened to swallow her whole, she sang. Her voice was her shield, her weapon, her prayer. It brought her small coins from strangers, but more importantly, it reminded her that she was still human, still worthy, still here. That evening, Janelle was performing her usual set when she noticed the little girl in the wheelchair. The child's face was turned toward her with such focused attention that Janelle felt compelled to sing directly to her. She chose a gentle lullaby, one that seemed to flow from somewhere deep in her memory. As she sang, the little girl's smile grew brighter. Her hands began to move slightly, as if trying to clap. And for those precious minutes, Janelle forgot that she was hungry, cold, and alone. She wasn't a homeless girl performing for spare change. She was simply someone bringing joy to another soul who needed it. What Janelle didn't realize was that she wasn't just making a disabled child smile. She was about to discover a truth that would change everything. From across the restaurant, Marcus watched in stunned silence. He hadn't seen Lila respond to anything in months. Her doctors had warned that she might be retreating further into herself, that stimulation was becoming increasingly difficult. Yet here was this homeless girl, accomplishing in minutes what teams of specialists couldn't achieve in years. As the song ended and applause rippled through the restaurant, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He approached the girl, his heart pounding with something he couldn't name. "That was beautiful," he said, his voice gentler than usual. "What's your name?" "Janelle," she replied, her eyes darting nervously toward the exit. "My daughter." Marcus gestured toward Lila, who was still staring at Janelle with bright eyes. "She hasn't smiled like that in months. You have a gift." Janelle looked at the little girl in the wheelchair, her heart squeezing. "She's beautiful." "What's her name?" "Lila," Marcus said. "She can't speak, but I think she likes your singing." As if responding to her name, Lila made a small sound, not quite a word, but the closest thing to vocalization she'd managed in weeks. Both adults froze. "She's trying to say something," Janelle whispered, moving closer to the wheelchair. As she knelt beside Lila, something strange happened. The little girl reached out with a trembling hand and touched Janelle's face. And in that moment, Janelle felt a jolt of recognition that made her gasp. Those eyes. That delicate bone structure. The way Lila's eyebrows curved. Janelle's hand flew to her own face, tracing the same features she saw reflected in the child before her. "What is it?" Marcus asked, noticing Janelle's sudden pallor. Janelle's voice was barely a whisper. "What's your last name?" "Quinn," Marcus replied, confused by the strange question. The blood drained from Janelle's face. "Marcus Quinn." "Yes, do I know you?" Janelle's eyes filled with tears. "You're my uncle." "Marcus, I'm Sophie's daughter." "Your sister Sophie." The restaurant seemed to spin around Marcus. Sophie. His younger sister who had died in a car accident 13 years ago. The sister he'd grown distant from in his pursuit of success. The sister whose funeral he'd attended, whose infant daughter he'd been told was being cared for by her father's family. The niece he'd lost track of in his grief and guilt. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Janelle died with her parents. I was told." "I survived the crash," Janelle said, tears streaming down her face. "I was told my father's family would take me, but they didn't want me. I've been in foster care, group homes, on the streets. I've been looking for family my whole life." Marcus felt the world tilt on its axis. This homeless girl, this angel who had made his daughter smile, was his own blood. His sister's child, abandoned and forgotten while he lived in luxury just miles away. The weight of 13 lost years crashed over him. All this time, while he'd been building his empire, his niece had been struggling to survive on the streets. The guilt was crushing, but something else was emerging from the devastation. Purpose. "You're coming home with us," he said firmly. "Tonight. This ends now." But Janelle shook her head. "I don't need charity." "This isn't charity," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "This is family. And family doesn't leave family behind." As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Lila made another sound, clearer this time. It sounded almost like Janelle. Both Marcus and Janelle turned to stare at her in amazement. "She said your name," Marcus whispered. "She actually said your name." From that day forward, everything changed. Marcus welcomed Janelle into his home, but more importantly, into his heart. The penthouse that had been silent for so long was filled with music as Janelle sang to Lila every day. And miraculously, Lila began to respond. It started small. A hand movement during a particularly moving song. A sound that almost resembled humming. An attempt to move her head in rhythm. But gradually, the changes became more dramatic. Lila's physical therapist was amazed. It's like she's found motivation she never had before. Music therapy can be powerful, but this is extraordinary. More than that, Janelle seemed to understand Lila in ways no one else could. She would sing specific songs when Lila was frustrated, different melodies when she was sad. She created hand games and gentle movements that Lila could participate in. And slowly, Lila began to emerge from the shell her condition had built around her. The breakthrough came 3 months after Janelle moved in. Marcus was working in his study when he heard something that made him drop his phone. Laughter. Clear, joyful laughter coming from the living room. He rushed to find Janelle singing a silly song about a dancing penguin while making exaggerated movements. And Lila was laughing, her whole body shaking with mirth, her voice clear and strong. But that wasn't the miracle. As Marcus watched, Lila raised both hands above her head, mimicking Janelle's movements. Her arms, which had barely responded to months of therapy, were moving with purpose and control. "Keep going," Marcus whispered to Janelle, afraid to break the spell. Janelle continued the song, adding new verses about flying elephants and singing fish. And Lila kept moving, her hands dancing in the air, her laughter filling the room like music. That night, Lila spoke her first complete sentence in over a year. "Janelle, sing the penguin song again." The doctors called it unprecedented. Physical movement returning alongside vocal ability suggested that Lila's condition was responding to emotional stimulation in ways they'd never seen. The combination of familial connection, musical therapy, and pure joy was creating neural pathways that medicine alone couldn't achieve. But the real miracle was deeper than medical recovery. It was the healing of a fractured family, the redemption of lost time, and the power of love to overcome any obstacle. Marcus, who had once measured success in stock prices and profit margins, learned to measure it in his daughter's laughter and his niece's smile. He established a foundation for homeless youth, ensuring no child would face what Janelle had endured. He also hired the best geneticists money could buy, not just for Lila, but to research her condition so other families might benefit. Janelle, who had spent years believing she was unloved and unwanted, discovered that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up, caring, and never giving up on each other. Her voice, which had once been her only weapon against despair, became an instrument of healing for the entire family. And Lila, who had been trapped in silence, found her voice again through the love of a family that refused to let her disappear. One evening, as spring painted Central Park in soft greens and Marcus watched his daughter take careful steps with Janelle holding her hand, he understood something profound. All his wealth, all his power, all his success meant nothing compared to this moment. The homeless girl he'd found in a restaurant had given him something no amount of money could buy, his family back. 6 months later, at Lila's 9th birthday party, she stood at the front of their living room and sang a duet with Janelle. Her voice was soft but clear, her movements careful but deliberate. The room was filled with doctors, therapists, and friends who had witnessed her journey from silence to song. As the last notes faded, Lila looked directly at her father and said, "Daddy, I'm not broken anymore. I'm just different. And different can be beautiful." Marcus wiped away tears as he realized the truth his daughter had discovered. None of them were broken. They were just a family that had found each other again, stronger for having been tested, more loving for having been lost. The girl who had sung for survival had become the voice of redemption. The billionaire who thought money was power had learned that love was strength. And the disabled child who couldn't speak had found her voice by helping others find theirs. Together, they had discovered that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought, sold, or traded. They could only be given freely, received gratefully, and shared endlessly. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances and the power of family. Sometimes the miracle we're looking for comes from the most unexpected places, in the form of people we never thought to look for but always needed to find.